Obama addressed the nation about the end of combat operations in Iraq, and during his remarks, he proclaimed that he has fulfilled his campaign pledge to the American people to end the war in Iraq. But despite what he said tonight, President Obama wasn't always this optimistic.
I am not persuaded that 20,000 additional troops in Iraq is going to solve the sectarian violence there. In fact, I think it'll do the reverse. I am going to actively oppose the president's proposal. I don't doubt his sincerity when he says that he thinks this is the best approach, but I think he is wrong.
Not only have we not seen improvements, but we're actually worsening potentially a situation there.
It's time to end the political game playing so we can finally end this war.
And joining me now with reaction is Indiana Congressman Mike Pence. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, so he said in the very beginning that, look, there's nobody that I know, not an expert in the region, no military officer that I've spoken to that believes that the surge would make any substantial difference on the situation in the ground. He couldn't even acknowledge tonight, even though I guess the sincerest form of flattery is what's happening in Afghanistan because they're trying to duplicate it. Couldn't even acknowledge that it worked. I thought that was a big missing part of the speech tonight.
No, I think there were a lot of missing parts of the speech, and I think you put your finger on the chief among them. Let me say first, I think the president acknowledging the sacrifice of our armed forces, the families, especially the families of the fallen and injured, was right and fitting. But he did not give victory. Well, two things, Sean. Number one, he didn't give credit where credit is due to his predecessor, who, against a withering domestic criticism, refused to accept defeat in Iraq. And secondly, he used the word victory at the tail end of the speech, but it's not at all clear he was actually referring to Iraq when he did it. There's something about there's no ceremonies for surrender. I thought this speech was wanting. I thought it lacked gratitude toward his predecessor. Clearly, look, he said tonight, that he and President George W. Bush disagreed about the war. Well, Sean, the American people know they didn't just disagree about the war. They disagreed about the surge. And then Senator Barack Obama, Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi were wrong about the surge, and they were wrong to oppose it, and the American people know it.
Here are the questions that I think remain unanswered tonight. Did the surge work, Mr. President? Did we win the war in Afghanistan? Did we have a victory here? Was the surge the right strategy in this conflict? What would Iraq look like today if we didn't go forward with the surge?
Well, I think we know what it would look like. It would look like Iraq looked in 2006 and in early 2007. You played those clips, and you did it on your radio show today as well. It's almost like the White House doesn't know about YouTube right now, or they don't know that people could just go and look at what the president said. That last clip you showed in late 2007. Then Senator Barack Obama was still saying that the surge wasn't working, even though the evidence was overwhelming that it was. Look, I get it. I understand how difficult with his left flank it would be for him to acknowledge that he was wrong, that Nancy Pelosi was wrong, that Harry Reid was wrong, that the 10 votes they took in the House of Representatives for a timetable for withdrawal and essentially setting the table for surrender were wrong. But at least he could have said tonight that George W. Bush and I disagreed on strategy and tactics, but I admire his determination and his willingness as President of the United States to see this through despite overwhelming public opposition. He didn't say that. He didn't give credit where credit is due, and I think that's a disappointment.
Yeah, and trying to dovetail the economy into the speech, and I'll get into this in more detail with our panel, seemed a little bit odd to me. And more importantly, I think, again, Krauthammer was right in the sense that you get the impression that he views the war on terror, which he's been resistant to use the term, man-caused disasters, overseas contingency operations, as a distraction, not as something that he needs to be actively involved in winning.
Well, I think that's fair. Look, I mean, all across the country, people are focused right now on jobs and spending. But tonight, on the final day of combat operations, in Iraq, we were all looking for him to acknowledge the success of our military and to cast a vision. I mean, where was the language about bear any burden, pay any price to ensure the survival of freedom? Instead, he was back to championing, more spending, a national energy tax. Look, it was a missed opportunity. It lacked vision. He didn't give credit where credit is due, and I think the American people get that.
All right, Congressman, appreciate you being with us, Congressman Pence. And to read more about tonight's presidential address and other hot topics, by the way, you can go over to